All right, Adam Plantinga is an Agatha Award nominated and Silver Falchion Award winning author. Those are both very, very prestigious awards. He is also a sergeant with the San Francisco Police Department. His new book, Policecraft, deals with police shootings, racial profiling, community relations, and every other aspect of policing. It is out now. It is a really good read. So is his other book, 400 Things Cops Know. Adam, it is great to finally meet you. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thanks so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. It is a pleasure. I've been using you as a source for years, so it's nice. It's nice to actually see you. This book, first of all, it's a fascinating book, and you write really well and really clearly. But it's clearly a book. It's not. I wouldn't call it politically incorrect. It's a book that is indifferent to whether it is politically correct or not, because you're trying to tell people the truth about what it is to police the streets of our cities. Let's start with this. Under the Obama administration, there were all these charges of widespread racism among the police. How do you feel about that? Is there any truth to that, to the idea of constant racial profiling, racial bigotry among the police?
Well, one of the things I talk about in Policecraft is in my time on the job, about 17 years, I've heard another officer use the N-word once, and that was a decade ago in Milwaukee. The vast majority of the cops that I know treat people with respect. I think sometimes there's this impression that the cops are at the station house rubbing their hands together and gleefully cackling about arresting a black male. As a cop, you go to where the crime is, and the vast majority of our calls happen in sort of lower socioeconomic neighborhoods, housing projects, and those are predominantly black and brown neighborhoods. So that's sort of the nature of the playing field. I will say this: we had a sort of recent texting scandal on the San Francisco Police Department where several officers made racially inflammatory texts, and I got to say, maybe that's naivete on my part, but I was really taken aback by that. Those are not the cops that I know. The ones that I know, they do the job the way it's supposed to be, which is equal justice under the law.
I went up to San Francisco. It's years ago now, but I was writing a series of detective stories that took place up there, and I interviewed police detectives. And one of their real frustrations were and I don't want you to talk about your department specifically, but one of their great frustrations was that there were techniques that they felt that they should be able to use that were restricted, that kept them from helping people, especially people who are out on the streets, especially people who might not be totally sane. Do you feel that the rules that restrain police are basically hurting the public?
Well, when I think of that question, I think of the mentally ill. San Francisco has, my guess is as much as any city in the nation, a severe problem with mentally ill folks on the street. And as a cop, if you deal with someone who is a danger to themselves or others or gravely disabled, you can put a 5150 hold on them, which is just basically a short-term hold where they can be assessed by someone in the mental health field. But sometimes you'll put that hold on someone and you'll see them back on the street in 4 or 5 hours. There are people out there who simply cannot function in our society, and we're not doing them any favors by giving them their freedom. And there's more of a push now to do sort of a conservatorship, where someone is put in a setting and that's where they get care, and they don't have the freedom to leave. But I think we need more of that, because I've seen people that are, they're just suffering. And as a cop, you look at that and you shake your head, because, for whatever reason, these are folks that they have shown time and time again that they cannot be among people.
When you said before that a lot of the neighborhoods where the crime is are black and brown neighborhoods, when you go into those neighborhoods, what is it that you see that you think, I don't want to say causes that crime, but maybe is connected to the high crime? What are the behaviors, attitudes, problems that you see on the street that need to be addressed, that maybe go beyond what the police can do?
Well, drug use and abuse is behind just a glut of crime. The person that's breaking into your car and taking the spare change in your console is probably addicted to something. A lot of prostitutes are out in the street, not because they're addicted to sex, but because they're addicted to street drug. And then unfortunately, sometimes you have generations of families who are maybe living in a low-income neighborhood or in the housing projects, and that's not what the housing projects are for. They're to give someone a sort of a leg up, but you don't want to have a grandfather and a father and a son living there, because then you just have some of these generations of poverty, and you have parents that teach their kids to hate the police, and their kids teach their kids, and so it goes. As a cop, we can't arrest our way out of the drug problem. It's not even close.
Mm. There's one of the sections in Policecraft that I just loved. It was incredibly poignant, touching. It had an element of dark comedy to it, as so much police work does. But you talk about the culture that becomes evident as you listen to people make their phone calls after they've been arrested, as you hear people speaking in cells after they've been arrested, that an entire culture seems to grow up out of this, that's related, even when people aren't black. It's sort of related to black culture. People start to speak in black terms. What is it that you see? I mean, you're a sergeant now, so I assume you spend a lot of time in the station house. What is it that you see what does it tell you about the world out there that is causing so much crime?
Well, yeah, it's pretty depressing, because you have people who seem to grow up and they expect to go to jail, or they expect to have their friends go to jail, or they don't have a job and they don't know anyone who has a job. It's sort of, you have people that they have sort of low expectations of themselves and of their friends. And, I sort of compare it to my own background growing up. I grew up the son of a seminary professor and a fourth grade Christian school teacher, and my house was filled with classical music growing up, and my parents I don't remember them having a loud argument. I grew up in an atmosphere of sort of reason and stability, and a lot of folks who deal with as cops grew up in a neighborhood where, if they're trying to do schoolwork, they're interrupted because there's gunshots outside.
Yeah.
Or they're trying to go to the bus stop and someone punches them in the face and takes their phone. It's a very different kind of lifestyle.
I've got to ask you this. I mean, as a professional matter, and I'm sure you're asked it all the time, but what do you see on television and in the movies? I mean, if there was something you could erase from the depiction of police in television and the movies, what would it be?
Oh, there's just so many things. I think the thing that I was thinking of recently is I was watching one of these Law and Order type shows, and the cops were kicking down the door looking for a bad guy, and there's a couple of them, and they go in, and after about 4 seconds, one of them says "clear," like the whole apartment is clear, and I thought, there's about 14 different rooms and crevices you haven't checked yet for the suspect. But for the sake of the drama, they don't want to take the time to show them doing all those checks. So,
right.
Some of that it's par for the course. You want to streamline a little bit to keep the audience attention. So I understand that.
What about in terms of the personal lives of police officers? I mean, when you see, is there a TV show that you like? Or was there a TV show that you liked that you thought was pretty accurate?
I thought the HBO show The Wire was the gold standard.
Yeah.
I think that's not only the best cop show I've ever seen, but probably the best show I've ever seen.
Yep.
There were some smart minds and smart writers behind that, and I thought they really got it. They really captured a lot of sort of the cop dynamics and the drug dealer dynamics, and how those two sort of bounce off each other.
What about in terms of movies? Is there anything that you see in the movies that you have ever thought, like, yeah, that's pretty much a cop's life. Those are the things that I deal with.
I thought The Departed got a few of those things right. I enjoyed that movie.
Yeah.
Let's see what else. I think the great cop movie still has to be made. So I'm waiting for it.
All right. Now, if somebody went out, I mean, I've done drive-alongs with the police and all this, but if somebody really went out and was given unfettered access, I mean, that was one of the things that made The Wire so good, was that he had written that book, Homicide: A Year on the Streets, where he had unfettered access. If everybody could do that, what do you think would change in the country? What do you think would be different about a country in which everybody, you have that great quote in Policecraft from Thucydides, I think, about the fact that the intellectuals don't fight and the fighters don't think.
Right.
But what do you think would change if people rode along with the police for, say, a year and really saw what went on? What do you think would be the main revelations?
Well, I think there'd be a lot of revelations. One of them is I think that people would be, pleasantly surprised by how decent and civil cops are when dealing with incredibly difficult people. If you're a cop and you're doing the job right, you have a long fuse, and we need that because we're dealing with folks that are, that are irrational, that are strung out on dope, that you're not catching them on their best day. The other thing is, I think people watch movies and shows and they see, the protagonist cop knocking someone out with one punch. In real life, it is really hard to get someone in handcuffs that doesn't want to go in handcuffs. And I've been in situations where we had a woman who was 5 feet tall and 90 pounds, and it took 4 cops to get her into custody. That's sort of the norm.
Right. I mean, it takes more people to bring somebody down without hurting them, I guess, than it does. I mean, obviously, if you shot somebody, that would be the end of it. But if you're not going to do that, you really need to. It takes a lot of force to do it, and it's ugly to look at. It's ugly to see, and I think people get confused by that. I guess as a final question, is there something? I mean, I personally felt under the Obama administration that police were mistreated and were spoken about in a way that was unfair. Is there some way that the communities that are at odds with the police, Black communities, Black people who maybe don't have problems with the police themselves, but hear about the problems or have friends who have problems, is there something that you could tell them that would set that straight? Is there some way that they could maybe change their opinion?
Well, I think there's 2 things that come to mind when you ask me that. The first is a lot of departments, including the San Francisco Police Department, have body cameras now. And that goes a long way to sort of setting the record straight.
Interesting. Okay.
So, for instance, you might have a shooting and the word on the street is, hey, the cop shot this guy for no reason. But then the police chief can show the body-worn camera footage, and it shows a suspect, wheeling around and pointing a handgun at the officers, and the officers have to fire for the sake of their lives. So that's sort of a tangible record that you can show people and say, look, what the cops are telling you is what happened. The other thing that I think of is, I think a traditional police weakness is we're not always that good about explaining ourselves. So we might make an arrest on sort of a hot corner, and now you have people with their phones out and they're videoing it. And it used to be the cop response was, "Hey, get out of here," or "You're next," or "You're coming with me next." Those days are over. We need to be better about explaining ourselves. So again, if the people on the corner are saying, "Hey, the cop just arrested the guy for no reason," then I, as a sergeant or a police officer, can say, "Look, this guy has a parole warrant, so he had to come with us." And it's so simple, but it's so direct. And I've actually seen that get good results, because then you have people saying, "Oh, okay, I get it." It doesn't always work, but it's worth a shot.
Yeah, Yeah, so it's funny what talking to people can do. You're absolutely right. Adam Plantinga, the book is Policecraft, What Cops Know About Crime, Community, and Violence. Really well written, really clear. If you want to know what police see and what their lives are like, it is very well worth ordering and reading. Adam, thanks for coming on. I hope we'll talk again.
Thank you. And I just like to say I've really relished your writing over the years. Keep up the good work.
Oh, thanks very much. I appreciate it. Coming from you, that's a compliment. Thanks a lot.
You bet.